My husband spoke so softly that the ambient noise of the wedding crowd completely swallowed his words. He leaned in, looked me straight in the eyes, and delivered the quiet blow that would instantly end our 22-year marriage. He told me I was an embarrassment. I stood frozen on the immaculate marble steps of the Dallas Country Club, wondering if the afternoon heat was making me hallucinate around us. Wealthy guests in custom tuxedos and silk gowns floated toward the ballroom while a string quartet played in the distance. I was not standing outside because I was late, but because the security detail had politely barred my entry. The guard had explained with genuine embarrassment that my name was missing from the master guest list. I had assumed my husband would laugh, apologize, and resolve the administrative mix-up immediately. Instead, Caleb adjusted the platinum cufflinks I had gifted him for our last anniversary and confirmed my worst fears. He explained that his mother did not want me there because my presence would make the other guests uncomfortable. When I demanded to know why, his jaw tightened, and he calmly repeated that I was simply an embarrassment. The sheer, calculated composure in his voice felt far worse than any screamed insult ever could. I stared at the man I had loved since my youth, the same man whose business proposals I had stayed up all night rewriting. I looked past his shoulder and saw my mother-in-law, Beatrice, glowing beneath a massive arch of white orchids. She looked ecstatic, and she had every reason to be, considering that just 3 days prior, I had quietly finalized the purchase of her $8 million waterfront estate in Florida. Everyone in the family believed Caleb had funded that magnificent villa, and I had foolishly allowed them to believe it. I took out my phone, typed a single word of acknowledgement to my husband, and sent it before walking back to the parking lot. As the valet brought my car around, I sat in the driver's seat and finally allowed myself to breathe. My marriage was over, not because of a betrayal of the flesh, but because respect had died. I watched the happy families taking photos on the lawn, knowing that my silent generosity had built their entire reality. I had funded the floral arrangements, the classical musicians, the premium champagne, and even his sister's upcoming European honeymoon. Beatrice had spent months publicly praising her son's incredible financial success and generosity. Caleb had simply smiled, accepted the unearned credit, and let his family believe he was their sole savior. My phone buzzed on the dashboard, displaying a call from my loyal executive assistant, Clara. She immediately noticed the tension in my voice and, without asking prying questions, quietly asked what I needed. I instructed her to send me the direct contact information for Raymond Vance, the senior partner at our estate law firm. Raymond was the one man who understood that the entire lifestyle of the husband's family rested on my shoulders. I stared at the phone number for several minutes, resisting the powerful urge to react out of pure, unadulterated anger. I had built my investment firm by remaining completely logical in high-stakes situations, and this would be no exception. If I was going to dismantle the life we had constructed together, I would do it with surgical precision. I drove aimlessly through the city, watching the sunset paint the sky in deep shades of amber. Exactly 1 hour after leaving the country club, I pulled over by the lake and dialed Raymond's direct line. He answered instantly, surprised to hear from me during what was supposed to be a major family celebration. I told him the wedding was over for me, and that we needed to immediately audit every single financial arrangement connected to my husband's family. Raymond did not hesitate, instructing me to meet him at our corporate headquarters right away. When I arrived at the office, the entire 26th floor was illuminated, casting a sharp glow over the darkened city below. Raymond was already waiting in the main conference room, surrounded by several stacks of legal folders. He looked at me with deep concern, asking what had transpired to trigger such an urgent, late-night meeting. I placed my phone on the table, allowing him to read the dismissive text messages from my husband. My mind drifted back to when I first met Caleb, a charming man from what everyone assumed was an incredibly wealthy dynasty. In reality, I was an orphan who had clawed my way out of poverty through sheer determination and endless hard work. During our honeymoon, I discovered his family was buried under mountains of hidden debt, desperately maintaining an illusion of high society. I had quietly stepped in, using my resources to rescue his father's failing enterprise. Over the next 2 decades, my investment firm flourished across multiple states, making money a tool rather than a worry. Meanwhile, Beatrice's financial demands grew larger, shifting from student loans to luxury vehicles and expensive medical procedures. Every time Caleb handed his mother the keys to a new car, she praised her wonderful son while completely ignoring me. I had stayed silent to protect his pride, but that silence had only bred supreme entitlement. Raymond opened a heavy binder, revealing that I had personally financed 38 major acquisitions and lifestyle expenses for his relatives. The luxury homes, trust funds, and private school tuitions all carried my legal signature, while Caleb had signed absolutely nothing. Raymond gently reminded me of his past warnings regarding the danger of prioritizing marital trust over proper legal boundaries. I walked to the window, realizing Caleb had simply stopped noticing the immense weight I carried suddenly. My phone illuminated with consecutive missed calls from Caleb, followed quickly by urgent messages from his mother and sister. Caleb's text demanded to know why the Florida real estate closing had suddenly stalled at the title agency. Raymond smiled faintly, noting that the family was already experiencing the very first ripple of my quiet retaliation. For 22 years, I had solved their problems instantly. But tonight, they would have to face the storm alone. By early the next morning, I was back at my desk with a cup of black coffee, feeling completely focused and calm. Clara informed me that my husband had already attempted to see me multiple times, but she had turned him away. At 8 o'clock sharp, my legal and financial teams gathered around the massive boardroom table to review our options. We identified 37 active financial guarantees, including the pending multimillion-dollar Florida mansion. I instructed my team that I had no desire to maliciously ruin anyone, but I would no longer finance people who publicly humiliated me. Raymond immediately began drafting formal notices to suspend the funding for the Florida estate and revoke our personal loan guarantees. Within hours, these documents were dispatched to the respective banks and escrow offices. Meanwhile, 40 miles away, the family was gathering for a post-wedding brunch, completely unaware of the sudden collapse. My phone rang again at mid-morning, and this time, I decided to answer my husband's frantic call. Caleb sounded panicked, explaining that the bank was refusing to finalize the home purchase without my explicit, written authorization. When I confirmed that the suspension was intentional, he stammered, attempting to apologize for his behavior at the wedding. He begged me to just call the bank and fix the mistake, still assuming I would quietly clean up the mess. I calmly informed him that the money they had been spending for decades belonged entirely to my corporation, not his personal accounts. Caleb fell completely silent, his mind struggling to process the sudden revelation that his family's entire lifestyle was funded by me. He asked if his mother's endless gratitude had been directed at the wrong person all along. I confirmed the truth, realizing that 22 years of comfortable assumptions were disintegrating in a matter of seconds. By the time I agreed to let Caleb up to my office, he had been waiting in our reception area for nearly 3 hours. He looked entirely defeated, his expensive suit wrinkled and his eyes heavy with exhaustion and sudden realization. He sat across from me as Raymond systematically presented the decades of financial records proving my sole ownership of their assets. Caleb stared at the documents in disbelief, realizing the magnitude of his family's mistake. Just then, Raymond's phone rang with an incoming call from an incredibly frantic Beatrice, which I instructed him to place on speaker. Her loud, demanding voice filled the room, demanding to know why their access to the family accounts had been restricted. I looked at Caleb, who simply looked down at the mahogany table in absolute silence, unable to defend the illusion any longer. I realized then that while some marriages end in loud arguments, mine ended with a quiet restoration of my own self-respect.